Hey, good morning and good evening for me. Ryan, thank you very much for being here and having a chat with us at Explorers Web. Um, can we start by, I would like you to introduce yourself, right? Because you can do it, you're a mountain guide for, I don't know, but you run mountain professionals for 15 years already, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. It suddenly it creeps up on you the number of years you've been doing it, and I've been a mountain guide for a little bit longer than that. So yeah, I'm the owner and director for Mountain Professionals, and I also guide quite a lot of trips still. And so yeah, just getting around the world for many years on a lot of peaks.
hmm Well, being in the tourism industry, this is a horrible year, isn't it? But how about it is? I mean, is and and it no hope to save the season partially at least, or do something?
It's been tough for companies like ours, because obviously the Everest season's a big change for that being canceled, which is a big part of our year in the springtime, and unfortunately this summer is just dragging on where nothing's happening. There's no trips, there's no plans, and we had quite a busy summer plan with a lot of climbing in Russia and on Kilimanjaro at the end of the summer, and in the US here. So unfortunately, it's been this like dominoes falling, like, okay, now it's still hanging on. And so this trip is not looking good, and people are obviously worried of travel and things. So, but we're starting to hopefully see the curve change a little bit as we look towards the end of the summer. And we're hopeful that we may even get some trips going the last week of July into August, but
Okay.
we don't know exactly. We're still kind of holding on and waiting to see. But so all we're doing is trying to remain positive, and talking to people that we know want to go on trips, and saying, hey, if we can do it, we're gonna run this expedition. And so then it just falls on to the governments and travel restrictions, and obviously people's own comfort level of if they feel like it's okay to travel. So we're just trying to be really receptive to people's concerns, and saying, hey, let's talk. If you think you may want to go, let's talk about deposits and things. But we understand that there may be, we need to have flexibility when it comes to this planning stage.
What kind of feedback are you getting from your clients, from your customers? Are they still hopeful or just I don't
Yeah,
know, given the season for over?
it's the I would say, like, the more immediate ones are not hopeful, right? They've been falling off and saying it's just too many questions and whatever. It's not right to plan a trip for my family yet or whatever. So, but looking forward into end of summer and beyond, people seem to be very positive, and maybe that's partly a factor of everyone's ready to go do stuff. They want to be able to plan these trips and go experience the adventures and just get out of the this thing we've all been in. And so maybe uh, that's probably why there's a lot of positive views for the future. We're seeing a pretty strong interest in our Antarctica season, which is not until December, January, and even that is a little bit in question right now. But as far as everything's going with the flight operators and all that, everyone's pretty optimistic that things will happen. So we're just kind of progressing right now with, yeah, let's talk about who wants to go on these trips. Let's start talking about deposits that would be refundable at this point, so that we at least get things in place and we know who would go if we can do these trips. So that's kind of our focus, is just being positive and saying, yeah, let's do it and see who wants to go. And then if we can't because of outside circumstances, then that's just the way it is.
Mhm. In fact, you were in Antarctica at the beginning of this year, so at least you had time to do something before
Yeah, yeah,
the lockdown.
yeah, yeah. I was there last season for the whole season doing a full ski trip to the South Pole from the Hercules start. And we also had several climbs on Vincent and the last degree trip with our other guides. So um, yeah, I was down for 2 months on the ice. It was a good time.
Yeah, I really hope you enjoyed before all these.
Where everything kind of collapsed after that
Yeah.
summer season in Antarctica. You know, I actually went straight from Antarctica and had a short break, and then went and guided Aconcagua in Argentina, and that was just when we started hearing these reports of this virus and stuff, and people were like, okay, well it'll fizzle out or whatever will happen, we don't know, but it wasn't a concern until we got back to the US, and we're looking towards the March time period with a Karsten's pyramid trip that also got canceled due to political reasons still at that time. It wasn't coronavirus related. But that mountain's starting to look better as far as being able to run trips there. But that was another hurdle because we couldn't do our March trip, and then Everest got canceled. So, as a business, we're basically looking at it could be up to 6 month total stoppage of running any expeditions. And so that's obviously a big challenge from a business standpoint. But and that's part of the reason we're trying to be positive and look to the future, because we're like everyone else, we're excited to get back out there and have these adventures.
It is, and also you were talking about the domino effect. It's not just you as companies, it's us as media, and not to talk about local communities in the mountain areas, which are for us is bad, for them is a tragedy.
Yeah.
I know some companies are trying to raise funds, or they are distributing some aid. Are you in touch with your staffs in other countries or with the local communities? Something you can do to help?
We did do a fundraiser for our Nepali staff that we always work with on Everest and Himalayan trips, and so we were able to send money to the families of our staff, and that was really nice to be able to do that. And because like you said, it's pretty devastating to the communities also in these locations that rely on working on these mountains and expeditions. And so that was definitely a positive to be able to help that on a small community level in Nepal. On the other locations, we haven't had to do that, just because we don't have such big staffs in
Yes.
other locations, more just local guides and our local partners that do logistics. So unfortunately, in those scenarios, we're all just in the same position of trying to do our best to run trips. So yeah, but we do whatever we can, certainly, to help out.
Yeah, of course. Do you reckon, is there still hope for, I don't know, some trips in the Karakoram at the end of summer? Some people are talking about Nanga Parbat in September, or of course the post-monsoon season in Nepal and Tibet. Do you think there still could be something going on there?
I think there could be. I know we do trips in Pakistan, not every year. We do it a little bit selectively, and I have talked to our partner operator in Pakistan more about the following season, just because this season we were not planning on an expedition there. And I know they're hopeful that things are going to happen. Of course, they're like everyone else, trying to follow what's happening and changes. And so it seems like it could be possible. I haven't followed the Karakoram in the past week or two to see what's going on. But I know that the bigger thing, at least for more operators that are not doing Karakoram trips, is the fall season in the Himalaya of Tibet and Nepal. And I think that's just going to be very selective on at least operators' side, right? Because we have to balance the demand of clients' interest with being able to do the trip. And so I think there's this balancing act of like people that want to go climb, say, a mountain in Tibet or Nepal, but at this point, they're not so sure if they should be really investing that money and time and training if they don't know it's going to happen. So I know a few people are planning on doing trips in that part of Himalaya in the fall. It certainly would be very welcome if that did happen, because it seems like it would break down that kind of wall we're facing and hopefully open up things and let the waves start to go through with trips. And so we're just kind of focused on that on some other locations this fall. Mm-hmm. But looking for the Himalayas definitely next spring and also the following fall for sure. So we'll see what happens and what transpires with the Nepal border specifically.
You see that right before the coronavirus crisis exploded, the comments around Everest were completely different, right? We've seen a totally deserted Everest this season from Nepal and just one national team, Chinese team climbing and remeasuring the mountain from China. But then the thing is that, right before the crisis, the old comments about Everest were about what we experienced the previous season and the media impact it had, right? It was about crowding. It was about not being adventure terrain anymore, right? I also read that, the Damien and the Benavides brothers, they apparently they confirmed back in Argentina that they are not going to guide on Everest any longer, because they said that in the present circumstances, probably due to the crowding, they cannot offer warranty enough to hold a safe expedition. They say that it's a question of time that it's going to be more accidents. You were there last year. You led a team on Everest last year on the south side. You summited and you came back safely. So I would really like to have your point of view on the matter and to maybe probably offer a different perspective of how bad the crowding was and what was the past and what's going to be the future of Everest right now that everybody's like, okay, it's not going to be this year, but on 2021 it's going to be the year of Everest and we're going to all be there.
Right. Yeah, I think one interesting point is that this season that did not happen this spring, the numbers were actually pretty far down for climbing as far as people on the permits. So that was a thing that was kind of a shame, because we were looking forward to that, right? Like a lower number of people this spring, which I know our clients were excited about. They're like, yeah, that's going to be great. Less people, probably some of the issues that they had heard of from the year before would be not as much of a factor, but then the season got canceled. So it remains to be seen what that will do to next year, whether it means more people or less, because we just don't know. But as far as last year, I mean, I totally understand the point of view that it's gotten more crowded in some parts of the route for sure. That's undeniable, but that's just a matter of some companies doing larger trips with lots of people. And as we all know, there's been somewhat of a, let's say, an overall experience level on the mountain that has gotten less over the recent years. And so that's a factor that's been in discussion a lot amongst the guiding community on Everest is, what should be a requirement to take a client on your team? What should be the requirement for guide services there? And should there be an overall number that Nepal needs to put in place, at least for that Nepal side? I can't speak for Tibet. I haven't been there since 2005 on the Everest side. But yeah, I mean, it was a little bit crowded for sure. But I do think, like I said, actually in an XWeb interview after that season, is you have to take things that are reported in the general media with a grain of salt and not look at one picture that was taken on a crowded summit ridgeline and think that that's how it was the entire time on a 45-day expedition on the mountain. There's lots of teams that go different times to do their rotations on the mountain. People start talking amongst different expeditions to find out when certain teams are going to do these rotations, and we stagger and try to maintain a little bit of space between each other. And so it really falls on the operators to manage the movements safely. Where that's been a problem is I think some of these large companies that are taking many people, it's really hard to manage lots of climbers, especially through like the ice fall and things like that. And so companies like ours, where we tend to have smaller teams that are really tight in units with guides, like we're able to move around other groups and stuff where we see that we don't want to be underneath some hazard, and we want to get through a section fast. Whereas these people that take large groups of people, it's hard to manage that and have them move efficiently through these areas. And so that I see as one factor. But the way we try to manage that is to avoid the crowded days on the lower part of the mountain and just do our best to kind of have that peaceful climbing days. On the summit day last year was pretty unique in the fact that the weather played a very large part in why it got crowded on those last two kind of big summit days. And it was because of a very early window of weather that allowed the rope fixing teams to get up and fix the summit, and like one or two or a few small groups went right behind them. But then the weather got really questionable for a period of time, and so what that did is it kind of compressed everyone else to late in the season, and that's why we saw the majority of teams all going on certain days. And so I don't think that's a thing that happens all the time. That was unique to last year. And so I don't think people should think that that's how it is every season, where it's like very crowded on certain days. It's I think I can recall the years before, 18, 17, I think it was 18, if I remember, where we were literally the only teams on the summit the day we got there, not the whole time, but maybe for like 20 minutes, there was no other people. And so it varies quite a bit year to year. And it's just going to be a matter of working together and making it safe for everyone.
And how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, well, we can speak for how our company approaches is taking people we really feel have a real good opportunity to summit and that are trained through climbing other peaks and have the appropriate skills for that area, that mountain specifically. So that's a first start. We know people that we take on the mountain are in the right place for that mountain. Yes, it's challenging and it's still hard, but they're going to be able to climb the route and not be so reliant on the staff to do everything for them. And that's what's happening with many other companies that are taking less experienced clients on the mountain and having to do way more things for each individual. And that slows things down on the route. And so that would be a way to change that, is to somehow try to, which Nepal has tried to do with the minimum altitude having climbed prior, but the jury's out if that's really going to help or not. But I think everyone's in the same boat. We're trying to figure out what is the best scenario to make that the best situation for everyone. And to me, it comes down to the guiding with your clients. That's how you make it safe. I mean, we do it where we have a small number of people climbing with us and we have a high ratio of mountain guides with them. And so we move as a unit and we can really manage that speed and safety, versus stringing out many people with many different Sherpas, or sending them out with a radio and one Sherpa and just saying, call us when you get to the next camp. To me, that's not guiding the mountain. It's just kind of like letting loose people that may or may not be really in the right place. And so that causes a lot of issues personally, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I understand you carefully select the people is going to be members in your team before getting there, right? What other criteria you use?
We tend, not always, but we tend to have people that have done lots of trips with us in the past. So we know them, we know their experience, we know, is it the right next step for them? And we may even say, hey, you should think of doing one more mountain like this one before, and then you're ready, kind of situation. But not to say we don't take someone that we have never climbed with, but they would have to have a pretty, solid climbing resume, and we would want to try to vet those people and just have conversations with them and say, like, how was that experience on that mountain? And companies do these days, at least American companies, will do some talking between us if mm-hmm. someone has done a trip with another company and not with us, or vice versa. And we'll contact each other and say, like, hey, how did that person do on that particular peak? Is there anything we should be aware of? And, so we can kind of get information to give us the best picture of someone's experience. So that's how we kind of manage it.
I see, because seen from the distance, last year there was a lot of talking from people who was there, people who had never been in a mountain. So we all had an opinion. And there was like this recurring comment that there are people who shouldn't be here in Everest. And then there was, okay, let's put the blame on, you name it, right? It was the large team, or just is too many inexperienced people. Maybe it's not expensive enough. It should be more expensive, or it's too expensive. This is only for millionaires, and they don't really want to climb, right? They have different motivations. So, but the fact is that in the end, who can tell, and how can it be told who should be on Everest and who don't?
Yeah.
What is the criteria, and who's to decide? The Nepal's government, or maybe individual responsibility?
Well, the answer I would give you to start is a little bit of maybe an old school mountain climber is, mountains are for everyone. So it's not for someone to say, you shouldn't be on that mountain. I don't know what your motivations are, or your experience, or whatever. It's great to go out and challenge yourself safely. And back when I first started climbing, we just went with friends and challenged ourselves more and more, and eventually brought that level up higher to different mountains. But from a guiding standpoint, it's our responsibility to give good advice to people asking if that's the right place for them. And that's part of the experience that you have from being on these mountains for a number of years, is you have almost this weird sixth sense, even just from emails. Honestly, you can start to get a feeling sometimes, like how you interact with people without ever talking to them personally. You can tell by the way they ask questions, what they claim is their past experience, and you start from there. And then, if someone writes to you and says, I get emails as the director of our company that say, I really want to climb Everest. Can you give me more information? And so one of the first things we do is say, that's great. We would love to work with you. What's your climbing experience? And often, not always, but often we never hear from them again, because maybe they know that they're just trying to look for someone that will take them there. And, they may respond saying, well, I don't have any experience, but I want to climb Everest. So it depends on the company's ethos, whether they say, that's great, come to Everest this year with us. Do you have money to pay us to go on the expedition? Then come on. Or the other people that say, well, I think you should do this, put these steps in place, and let's look at a progression to get you there safely, even to be guided. Because I think the common misconception is as long as there's guides and staff, and as we have made that Everest climb collectively in the industry, I wouldn't say easier, but just more structure, more staff, more fixed ropes, more really nice camps, people doing things for people. That has kind of lowered the bar in some people's minds. Like, hey, I can just go and do it as long as I'm, in kind of good shape. They'll take care of me. And that, I don't think that's the way people should approach a big mountain like that. It should be something you're working towards and you're really excited about, and putting in time and practice and getting the skills on lower mountains, so that you're not putting so much pressure on the guide staff to do things for you. You should just be like doing things with the team, and then we're there to help manage when things, don't go right, because then we can react and help people and make good decisions for when to climb or when to stay in a camp and all those other things. So being a strong climber just helps the whole team. Instead of having a decent team climbing and then a few people that maybe need a lot more attention, what they do is they take a lot of the guide resources to manage that. And that leaves other people with less of those guide resources. So we try to not do that, is basically what it comes down
to. In fact, speaking of Everest, now you mentioned, is there such a thing as an independent climber on Everest any longer, right? Because we read a lot about that. Yeah, I'm an independent climber. I'm just share a permit, but in fact, someone has to fix the ropes, and I rarely heard of anyone trying probably a new route, something like that, and not using the ropes, right?
Yeah.
And sure, I'm not going to use oxygen, but there's a lot of stocks of oxygen which is available, so just in case you might afford a change of opinion. So is there really a way to climb Everest independently? I mean, normal routes in peak season?
I think that, like a lot of these sports that we're doing, mountaineering, polar ski trips, it comes down to the verbiage you use. It's quite important. Yes, you can be an independent climber on Everest, meaning, at least how I envision that, is that just means that you're, maybe not part of a team. You're there by yourself. That doesn't mean you're doing it without support, because you're probably going to be using the fixed ropes that other people have put in, and you have this sense of security around you because there's other people, and there's lots of Sherpas on the mountain and lots of mountain guides. So if you did have an issue, you can rely on them to assist you. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's a funny play on words. One of the other things you hear is soloing Everest. The word soloing can be interpreted different ways, and I don't think you can say I soloed Mount Everest if you're using the fixed ropes that all the other groups are using and stuff. It just depends on the wording you use. The cool thing is there still is a lot of opportunity on Everest and other mountains there to actually go do independent expeditions, right? People still do it all the time. It's just that you don't hear about it as much. Going to other mountains, climbing new routes, doing the whole expedition themselves, just with the help of a local operator to do maybe cooks at base camp and permit assistance and things like that. So it does still happen, but I would say much less on Everest for sure. I can't remember last time people have been really pushing new routes there, but probably in the past few years, maybe some people.
I see. Well, let's see what the future brings.
Yeah.
Will you be there next year? Spring season?
Yeah. We are fortunate that all of our climbers from this season, they're all going next season. So uh, that was a good thing for our business and our team. And so we kind of limit our team size. We don't want to have the big city and base camp in our camp, and so we actually have just a few places for next year, because we don't take just like many people. So already 5 or 6 of those places for next year are taken. So we're just gonna go forward. We have a really strong team, lots of people that at least right now, everyone on our team has climbed with us a lot in the past, and we know them all, and they're all ready for that next step. For a lot of them, it's their last 7 summit, or they've climbed an 8,000 meter peak with us prior, and so we feel really comfortable with them on Everest, and it's like their time to go do that mountain, and so we look forward to getting back there next spring.
Yeah, so I can't wait to be reporting and be covering the new season with everybody back on the mountains and things back to something near normal.
Yeah.
They used to be. I really miss it, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, let's hope for the best, and let's keep positive, and I'm sure you'll find a way, and things will get to normal. Hey, thank you very much, Ryan, for all these stories and your point of view. It was really, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to talk to you, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, and good luck, and I hope to see you soon back in the mountains. Bye.
See ya.